don't get ready for your company. Like, don't change out of your pajamas, don't brush your hair, don't do anything to indicate that you are not where you really are. So they come in and they see that you're in your pajamas. They know, like, oh, either she just got out of bed or she's on her way to bed.
Balloons, bazookas, boobies, bosoms, boulders, cans, hooters, knockers, melons, honkers, jugs, rack, tatas, tits, torpedoes, guns, bust, doorknobs, coconuts, and our favorite one, the girls. Welcome to the All About Breastfeeding show, where your host, Lori, highlights mothers just like yourself and goes beyond the surface questions and digs deep so they share not only their joys and happiness in their daily breastfeeding life, but also their pain and struggles and how they worked through them.
Episode number 180. Welcome to All About Breastfeeding, the place where the girls hang out. I am your host, Lori Jill Eisenstadt, IBCLC, which stands for International Board Certified Lactation Consultants, and I help moms with breastfeeding. I'd love to welcome you to today's episode. My hope is that with every show and every story, you gain a new appreciation for mothers and babies in breastfeeding. These sentiments will come shining through as you listen to the story of my guest today. She shares the rawness of becoming a mother for the first time and talks about how she has evolved as a woman with each baby she has birthed. We also talk about the organizations that she's involved with. You will also frequently hear me talk about show notes. However, for the new listeners, it is worth mentioning again. The show notes are a rough transcription of what we talk about during the interview, as well as any links for books or videos or websites that were mentioned during the show. You will also find ways to contact with my guest in the show notes. This makes it easy for you, so you don't have to write this information down while listening to the show. The link for the show notes today will be announced at the end of today's show. We also had some really good conversation about the need to prepare for postpartum period. Darcy gave some helpful tips for the early days home with a newborn. As for myself, being a childbirth educator, birth and postpartum doula for many years, and now as a lactation consultant, I have collected a lot of great tips and suggestions on what is most helpful to new parents to enjoy those early days at home. I've gotten lots of feedback from parents of what's told me what's worked well and what has really not worked too well. I have written a book where I've put all of these tips together. It is called The New Mother Survival Guide, Practical Tips for the Fourth Trimester. This can be a great gift to give yourself or for any soon-to-be or new parent. Head on over to allaboutmothering.com/fourth-trimester-ebook. That is allaboutmothering.com/fourth-trimester-ebook. Fourth trimester ebook. As for today's show, let's get started. A bereaved mother, midwife assistant, doula, certified dancing for birth instructor, Arizona Breastfeeding Bag Project Volunteer, East Valley Birth Circle regular, and lots of other stuff she's doing for natural birth parenting community groups. Darcy grew up around bottle-fed babies, and yet when her time came, she felt a strong instinct to breastfeed. That was almost 11 years ago, and she's since clocked 7+ years breastfeeding 3 children. The breastfeeding relationship has been a very powerful dynamic in her life, and Darcy feels compelled to help spread the word to others about the benefits to both babies and women and families' whole health. I would love to welcome Darcy Newlin to the All About Breastfeeding show. Thanks so much for being here, Darcy.
Oh, it's a thrill, Lori. Thank you.
I can't wait to get into some of the stuff that you're involved in. I'd first like to start off by having our listeners get to know you just a little bit better. So if you would like to share just a little bit about where you grew up and what life was like for you as a little girl, that would get us off to a great start.
Okay. I was actually born here in Phoenix, over in Maryville in the late 70s.
What hospital?
St. Joe's.
Oh, cool. Okay.
My parents were from Bisbee, so my family kind of bounced between Bisbee and Phoenix until I came along, and then they bounced back to Sierra Vista, which is right next to Bisbee. The first girl for my parents, my family. And my mom was home, she was a homemaker then. My dad worked construction, but, I did have a bottle when I was a baby. Oh, it was great. My mom was home, and it was a great time being a little girl then.
Do you have any idea how many people were in the town that you grew up in?
I mean, now it's 40,000. I don't know what it was then. But even then, I felt like between Sierra Vista and Bisbee, like we just went back and forth a lot and, spent time with my nanas and cousins and stuff. So I felt like as a small girl, I had a lot of extended family and being cousins and little kids, coming into the family. So that was really cool. I just always really loved babies and little kids my whole life.
You babysat?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so if you're like me, like I came from a bottle-fed family also, and all the little kiddos that I babysat for were all bottle-fed too.
It was fun then, you get this new little cousin and you got to hold them and feed them. And it was really cool.
Yeah.
When it was my turn, I was like, wait a second, I'm just going to feed my baby. And it was different to deal with that. How do you transition your baby to a bottle, to let somebody else feed your baby or whatever?
Do you remember when you were a little girl or a young adult, what is it that you thought you would be doing with your adult life?
It looks very much like what I live now, I think. I wanted to have children. It's funny now that I have, the 3 and 1 in heaven. People will remind me, oh, when you were little, you said you wanted to have such a big family, Oh my gosh, okay, well, that's wonderful because now I have these crazy kids. So I really did want them, sometimes when they're driving me crazy.
Yeah, sometimes when they're driving us crazy, it's like, can someone please take them? What was I thinking exactly?
I always wanted to help people. And I get to do that now. I get to go in and help families, and it's such important work.
So let's talk about, so you have 3 kids. How old are they now?
My oldest, he'll be 11 in August. Then Zoe, she's my 3rd, but my 2nd living child. And she turned 4 this spring. And then I have a 19-month-old boy, too.
Okay. So your 3rd baby was stillborn? Your 2nd?
My 2nd. Mm-hmm. Luke.
What was your baby's name?
Lucas.
Oh, sorry for that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's unfortunate, and it's kind of a strange thing to talk about, when you're talking about babies and birth, because, it's just one of those things that people just don't want to talk about. But it is really important for me to, for me to acknowledge him. So thank you for letting me do that.
You're welcome. It's part of your history, part of life, and part of your family, right?
That's right.
All right. So I would love for you to share with us a little bit about breastfeeding your first baby. What I always like to know is what kind of preparation, if any, did you do? So before you had your first, did you have an opportunity to hang out with other moms who were breastfeeding? Did you watch videos? Did you take a class? And especially, it's quite a few questions in one question, because again, you did not grow up in a family that was breastfeeding, and it doesn't sound like that's something that you saw on any regular basis. So I guess my first question is, how did you know that you wanted to breastfeed your baby? And then when you answer that, I'd love to know what you did to prepare for breastfeeding.
Yeah, so as I got, pregnant with my first child and I was preparing to be a mother, I just knew that I just wanted to follow my instincts. I knew what I looked out in the world and what I saw was not going to work for me. I was just going to do my own thing. To my surprise, with the breastfeeding, it wasn't at all how I imagined it was going to be.
How did you imagine it was going to be?
I guess I imagined that maybe the baby would go on the breast and then some kind of like valve would open up and it would just kind of pour into him. It would sit in his belly and he would be satisfied for hours like I was when I ate food. And
Did you think like I did, like you would get to be, this was my version, like I'd get to be like Susie Homemaker in between while she slept. Like I would clean and I would cook a nice dinner and, I would take care of all those things while my very well satisfied, tanked up baby breastfed for, so she would be okay for 3 or 4 hours.
yeah, right? Exactly. But that wasn't how it happened. And because I didn't have a breastfeeding background and family, those first days when people came to meet the baby and I was having to like expose my body, I was like, oh my gosh, there was just instantly, you want to protect your body. There's kind of not shame, and like maybe modesty, I guess, that comes into play. So you have inhibitions about it. And so just trying to figure that out, that was just I didn't want that to be part of it. So I just would go into this nursery that I created for him and sit there and I could hear the conversations of the family visiting in the next room. And I would just be like counting and watching him and thinking, goodness gracious, when are you going to be satisfied? When am I going to get to go and see grandma or him or let grandma see you? So I felt like a lot of pressure. Like you got to feed the baby and take care of the baby, but then you need to share the baby with family. At one point, my mother-in-law, she bought me a clock so that I could set it in the nursery and I could see. I mean, because I'm in the room by myself, I felt like I was in like a time warp. It would feel like forever. And I just felt really isolated. The clock did not help because then you just watch the clock and you're like, oh, I've been in here for 20 minutes. This is, they're going to leave. They're never going to even see us.
It's the same thing like labor. Like you don't want to look at a clock while you're in labor either.
Right. Totally. So yeah, those days were really difficult, trying to figure out how I was going to honor my instinct to be a mother and honor my baby's needs to be fed and cuddled, and then honor my family who, they love him too and they want to connect with him too.
You brought up some very interesting points and I think some things that a lot of us have in common, but we don't necessarily know that this is going to be our life afterwards. And, we have company, we have relatives, but we're kind of sort of really not thinking about the fact that when we had our friends and relatives over previously, we weren't sitting there bearing our breasts. And even if we're not incredibly shy or modest, it's all of a sudden something you're just thrown into this very different world. And you gave birth, you're hormonal, and now we're not most adept at latching a baby on, and you have family and friends and everybody's excited. But what happens, because we're not used to that and we're trying to figure things out, you're exactly right. Many of us wind up alone in a room, usually the baby's nursery, isolated, while all this other fun stuff is also going on outside the door. And I think you said it pretty interesting. Like you could hear all these conversations going on and you're sitting wondering when your baby is going to be done so you can enjoy the conversation in the company of other people and that they can enjoy your baby, and how much pressure that creates.
Yes. Yeah, I think as a doula, I see that with moms and I try to just prepare them for that because I think that is a huge hurdle in a breastfeeding experience for a new mom in the modern world. A lot of us have blended families too. So that kind of can complicate it where maybe, it's a stepdad, and that's a little bit different than your own father. Yeah, it's something to really face and prepare for. And you have to work through. And it's not easy. It takes dedication and, to make the long haul. That might be what you have to do if you're modest.
Now, did you have the wherewithal at that point to realize what was happening and have a separate conversation with your husband about how you would deal with that? Or were you just so in the moment and exhausted and really couldn't have that conversation at that time.
Totally just coming out of birth and figuring it all out. No, we had no idea. It's all hindsight. It's all 7 years later, it all makes sense.
Right. And especially if you have surrounding you people who are not breastfeeding, they're not quite understanding everything either. Even if they're supporting you, they're still not quite understanding certain things. A lot of them don't even understand why our babies are feeding so frequently. And so when they are there, even if they're hanging out for 3 hours, they wonder why, 2 hours and 15 minutes you've been in the other room feeding your baby.
Exactly. And isn't that what our babies do too when they get kind of like overwhelmed? They're like, where's my mom? Where's my safe place? And so whatever was normal for your breastfeeding relationship changes when there's a change in your environment.
Did you have any particular challenges with breastfeeding regards to latching him on? Was it easy? Was it comfortable from the beginning? And yet your biggest challenge was that it was just awkward and you're trying to figure out? Or did you have any other kind of struggles?
Well, I had a friend at the time, and she was kind of my guru for my birth. She, a few months before me, had a baby naturally in the hospital and was breastfeeding. So she was like this unicorn at my time. So she was on me. She was like, you want this for yourself? Like, she called me. She's like, can I come over and just check on you? And I was just like, oh, okay, sure. Yeah, come by. She just so courageously came and just sat right next to me. And she was like, can I look and see how it's going? And as we're breastfeeding, and she observed us and she made some observations about how his lips looked and gave me some pointers, just keeping his mouth really open, like biting the sandwich or, that advice. And that helped me. And then she invited me to go to a Leche League meeting with her. And so we did that. And sitting in the Leche League meeting was mind-blowing. It was a huge meeting. And there were babies or, children from my baby who was just probably a week old to, toddlers running around and then hopping on their mom's lap for a drink or comfort or whatever. So when I saw that, that was like, hey, look, you can give yourself permission to do whatever you want to feed your baby. And here's like 20 examples. So I took that and just ran with it. Yeah. And we just kept working on it. We just kept working at it, just being patient and loving and try again.
That was probably the best gift that she could give you.
I love her for that. Yes. I will always, always just love her for that.
To be able to take you to a Leche League meeting, and not only to be able to take you to that, but also your response, because that scene could also freak out some people and turn them off, possibly before they've really gotten into the thick of breastfeeding. They're just thrown into this world of unknown. And like you said, babies, little toddlers jumping on their mom's lap for, I call it, just a quick drink. And for those of us who, if you haven't really breastfed before and you have an infant and you haven't grown up with that, it's part of our world now, right, Darcy? But then as a brand new mother, it could be a little freaky.
Yeah, I have a background in social science. So I love observing groups of people like that. And although, it was kind of like, whoa, this is new and not something you see every day. There were so many beautiful things happening, so I could pick those things out.
The thing that I loved about it also is that, on the one hand, it's not something that you're used to seeing. But if you go to a Leche League meeting in your community, which is what I did, what I walked away after my first time was thinking things might have been a little bit freaky, but I also thought in this strange way, but all these women are living in this community. They all live within 10 or 15 minutes either way from me. And so while it might be a little odd to me, these are just normal everyday moms doing this. It's just that I never got to see it because I haven't been a part of this world.
I never had any intentions of like having a toddler nurse at that time. I was still of the mindset of, okay, well, when he gets teeth, we'll probably be done, because I was afraid of that.
Right. Understandably so.
I didn't realize that, the mechanisms of feeding and how that wasn't really going to be an issue. And I didn't know that my baby was going to start teething at 3 months either. So,
So much we don't know. But yes, when we're thinking about breastfeeding, we have pictures of a little newborn, of a small baby in our arms, and we're not thinking about toddler. And I know that I didn't say to myself, I'm not going to be breastfeeding a toddler, but it just actually never entered my mind really until I saw it. And I love that you bring up babies getting teeth, because sometimes that does freak out women also. And then, but what I tell them, just keep going, you'll get good at it. You find your groove. And if your baby's breastfeeding well, you might have an issue here and there, but there are ways to work around it. But I think more babies than not don't have problems breastfeeding, and it's not like they're biting down on the nipple, because this is what moms think. It's like we're chewing food, and now they're getting teeth, and like you said, the mechanism, everything is very different. And if they've been latching on pretty well from the beginning, you're a lot less likely to have any issues. And if and when you do have issues, there are some tips and tricks of the trade to help out moms with that.
another thing that I kind of had in my mind about first time breastfeeding was that I didn't want to be one of those moms who, when the baby could walk up to you and pull your shirt up, I was like, okay, when that happens, we're done. Well, again, I had my children start walking at 10 months. So I was like, okay, well, there goes that idea.
We get really good at eating our own words, don't we?
Yeah, our children will come and prove us wrong every time.
Exactly. So I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about a couple of things. So one is your husband's part in breastfeeding. I think sometimes we tend to leave out whoever our partners are. And I really like to hear stories about how, in what ways they were helpful. And if he was not helpful initially, if you were able to communicate to him what it is that you needed in the very early days of breastfeeding.
Oh, we were just talking about this at the East Valley Birth Circle, how thirsty you get when you sit down and first start breastfeeding. And so I would, we were in this teeny tiny little townhouse, but still, as soon as he would walk to the other side of the townhouse, I would call to him and, I need a drink of water. So he would joke that he was the water boy first few weeks. Honestly, it's really, other than like supporting me with that, like I need a diaper or I need water, it was really me breastfeeding. I pumped with the first one, trying to pump, but that was, hard to do to get him to feed. He did feed them. I wouldn't eventually go back to work. And then they didn't want a bottle, and he'd have to feed them with like a spoon or a syringe. So that was interesting for him to have to find an alternative to feeding the children without a bottle per se. But yeah, really, as far as like the day in, day out of breastfeeding, he's like, he's my hands when my hands are full of baby.
When your hands were full with your baby, he was helpful with whatever else you needed from him.
Yeah, he had to be the extra set of hands.
You bring up how thirsty we get. I don't know if you saw that lovely cartoon that was going around the internet with a mom sitting in a chair nursing her baby.
Yes, and the big storage bucket of ice water next to her.
With this long straw.
I was like, oh, yes.
How many households are going to replicate that same picture?
Right? And it was like right when it got hot here.
Yes. I thought that was so funny.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, it's so, so true. Just to have yourself prepared for your thirst.
So what happened with your other babies when you had your second and third babies who were breastfeeding? Did you feel like you were just so orientated in the breastfeeding mode that it was not any big issue for you at that time, as far as like say one of your challenges, friends and relatives in the newborn days? Is there anything that you did differently, or were you just so much more comfortable with everything?
All been different. So like with Zoe, because she was a rainbow baby, I was like super all over her. Like I just wanted to hold her and not let anybody else hold her. She was a home birth in the shower, and we just went from the shower to bed and just hung out in bed for a long time.
So wait a minute, let's just talk about that for a minute, because I know people are visualizing a home birth baby born in the shower.
Yeah.
So can you just give us just a little bit of information about that? What were you like sitting, squatting with their hands underneath you ready to catch the baby?
Yeah. It was this beautiful big walk-in shower at this house we were renting. We had a midwife and a student midwife there. And my husband was able to climb into the shower even too. And my 6-year-old son was right there. I ended up kneeling down. And then had my arms, like I was hugging on to my doula. Yeah, they offered to put a towel under my knees because you know how the bottom of showers is tile.
Right.
But I was just too deep into birthing. I was like, I just shake my head. No, I can remember that. But then the next day, like my knees were all sore from being on there. But no, she was right there and people caught her and things. The shower wasn't running at the time. I was going to run the shower, but I ended up just kind of stepping in there and going, no, she's going to come out.
That was interesting. So you walked into the shower intending on having some water therapy, but you never wound up turning it on. And so now obviously the cord is attached with, you hadn't birthed the placenta, so did you walk to the bed to birth the placenta?
Yes, I think I did.
Okay. I just want to tell people walk through that because some people can get freaked out about that. What happened with breastfeeding?
It was pretty good. It was a very kind of like a long prodromal labor situation. So by the time she was born, I was really tired. And I can remember just her waking up because she was born at 9 at night. And I remember waking up in the early hours of the morning to feed her and just being like, oh, I'm so tired. Gosh, how much do you need? Like, when are you going to be satisfied, But then this time I kind of started massaging my breast to kind of help facilitate. And so that's kind of like a little trick that I kind of do now when I'm co-sleeping and tired and the baby wants to feed and I want to kind of expedite things. I just kind of try to hand express to help them out, get back to sleep. But anyway, with her, the interesting thing I think was that I had a 6-year-old. That was the first time that I experienced mastitis, just, trying to be keeping up with my 6-year-old. So that was something new that I had to work through.
So not everybody knows what mastitis is. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it was just an infection in your breast. And I got this, and it hurts, it's painful. And then usually you get a red, hot spot. And again, it happened when I had company. Baby needed to feed and I probably delayed it a couple times. I would put it off for a second to do this or that or finish a conversation or what have you.
So the delay in feeding your baby, explain to us how that can lead to getting clogged ducts and or mastitis.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how it, creates it for a mom who is, if you've got your breast is filling up with the milk and you delay it, then you get an infection. Really, that's how I see it happen to myself, and I see it happen to new moms. Off your feeding, and you end up getting an infection.
Like you said, it's not fun. It can be very painful because once you get backed up, it becomes more and more difficult for you to let down for the milk to start being released. And it's like this vicious cycle. The firmer you get, the more uncomfortable you get, the more you need to release the milk. The firmer you get, the more difficult it is to release the milk. And then sometimes, like you said, the breast gets hard, it gets red, it gets warm. And then that leads to other things that, again, that vicious cycle, making it even more difficult for your baby to latch on to feed. And then when they do, it really hurts a lot. So were you a mother who got chronic clogged ducts and mastitis, or did it just happen to you once?
Not chronic. Yeah, I was able to remedy it really quickly, just with the old fashioned remedies. So anytime and it's been very few, but anytime I've kind of sensed it flaring up, I just go back to that old remedy and it's served me well.
And you also made that connection that to delay a feeding puts you at risk for that. So once we make that connection, we do our best to make sure that doesn't happen. And I tell moms, even if you just have to go to a restroom or somewhere private and do some hand expression for a few minutes just to release some of the milk while you're waiting to actually sit down quietly with the baby and have a good feeding, that can help tremendously rather than just letting the breast keep filling and filling with milk.
Right. And then when you made the point about the pressure, that resonated with me, because when you have company over too, some of us, if we're breastfeeding, we probably don't wear a bra, but then you have someone come over and you go, oh gosh, I better put a bra on.
Right.
So you're like exacerbating everything in favor of creating this situation for yourself. Yeah, gosh, darn it.
So you mentioned several really good points for new moms to keep in mind, and the importance of what we either don't know the first time around, or B, maybe we know it, but we're still just kind of feeling shy, and we're almost paying more attention to friends and relatives than paying attention to ourselves and being respectful of what the baby needs for us, because we're trying to be nice to everybody else, the company who wants to see the baby. And yet, doula now, and mom of three, you clearly know that someone needs to nicely be what I call the police person and tell the family members that maybe they just need to go. It's getting in the way, or to limit the time that they come to visit for short periods of time and not spend a whole afternoon there.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting time of recreating a family and the boundaries, or the mother, how you relate to your family. Yeah, it's a really amazing time, an opportunity to transform yourself, whether you stand up for yourself and your baby and say, hey, look, this is what we're doing and this is how we're doing it. And if you don't like it, you can go. Or being okay with being in a separate private space. Like, I can be honest that I have a thing about missing out. That was really hard for me with the first time. I can remember I'm the third in my family. So as a little girl, I can remember laying in bed and hearing conversations going on in the living room, and I had been sent to bed. So I don't know. I have this thing that, oh my gosh, I'm going to miss something. And I've had to learn that I'm not missing anything. I'm in the space of what I want to be part of. I chose to have a child and I wanted to breastfeed them, and this is all what I wanted, really. And sometimes you have to make choices, grown up stuff. Sometimes it's hard.
Sometimes it's hard. And the other reality is, I don't know about you, but sometimes I realize not really missing out on much anyway. You think you are.
You think you are, yeah, but you're not. That's right. I think
but
so.
You're not. You're not missing out because the conversations they could be ones you've heard many times, especially with relatives.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And you're spending the time with the baby. So what is the best tip that you have as a mom and as a doula in preparing the new parents for those early days of breastfeeding, particularly just the subject we've been talking about, because I think it's so prevalent, having family, friends, relatives. I think particularly when people drive far or fly in, there's so much more pressure on the mother to be able to have the baby and herself available to others. So what's your best tip that you tell new parents going into it?
Some good gems that I've picked up. Number one, don't get ready for your company. Don't change out of your pajamas. Don't brush your hair. Don't do anything to indicate that you are not where you really are. So they come in and they see that you're in your pajamas. They know, either she just got out of bed or she's on her way to bed, or obvious that this person in her pajamas with her hair messed up holding this baby, this is what she's doing. When we try to give an image by, getting ready or tidy the house or something like that, then that gives this message to those people who are coming that the reality of what's going on is not that it's different. Don't try to fake them out. Research safe co-sleeping as well. Resting and being able to be as rested and present for your baby as possible, I think, is a huge part of being able to breastfeed your baby for as long as you think you want to do that. So those are my two things.
Two excellent tips. And I've said both. I always love hearing what other people have to say, because I I say sometimes I get tired of hearing my own self say the same things. And I love how you put it to not show that you're dressed and ready for company. I think you said something along the lines of don't give them the image of where you really are. And I just love that because it's more or less what most mothers are trying to do. They're changing, they are brushing their hair. Some might even, incredibly enough, get to put on some makeup. But what they're doing is they're showing up saying, I'm ready for company. And I'm glad you're here and let's spend some time together. But the image you really do want to present is, and it's just stay in your pajamas, just stay the way that you were. And I think in that sense, hopefully they'll get the message that they're walking into your space and your time there and not necessarily getting all ready and prepped for company. That's what I was getting to, like the image that you're showing up with. That's really important. And I just think that it is so helpful for parents to also learn about co-sleeping or bed sharing and to do some research. And I will put some info and some links into the show notes. I will leave a message at the end of the show when we're done taping where they could find that, because you and I both agree on that, that is how most mothers are going to get some much needed rest, is by spending time with their babies in bed. And the reality is babies are feeding very, very frequently. And we have a nation telling moms, sleep when the baby sleeps, nap when the baby naps. But sometimes it's hard to do that if you're sitting in a room with a baby on a pillow and then they finally fall asleep and then you have to kind of separate them from you and put them down in a crib or another space and then go climb into bed yourself. Our babies could have had a really good feeding. They're very content. They're very happy. But the minute you separate them from us, they wake up.
Yeah, they're very smart. They know what they need to survive.
Exactly. So co-sleeping is a very, very huge tip that I would love to have anybody who's listening to just check into it and learn about it ahead of time so you're comfortable co-sleeping and bed sharing with your baby in those newborn days. So thank you so much for that tip. I would love for you to tell us, you're so involved in the birthing community here in the Arizona area. So talk to me a little bit about some of the volunteer efforts that you do. And I also want to hear about Dancing for Birth and anything else that you're up to.
Yeah, so I really feel like we have an amazing community here for natural birth and like attached parenting. There's that Arizona Birth Networks. I attend the East Valley Birth Circle in Chandler, and they have birth circles all around, Phoenix area. We're monthly where people who are getting ready to have a baby or parents with questions can come and circle up with other people and discuss and learn. I always still going for, 4 years, because, new people come in and they're sharing ideas and things change. So I always walk away with some really cool tip about parenting or about birth and stuff. So I love that. And then the Arizona Breastfeeding Bag Project is in response to all the free stuff that formula companies give to hospitals that are given to new parents. So the Arizona Breastfeeding Bag Project, we try to distribute information. We have a mom who makes homemade pads. So they get pads, water, whatever we can gather up by donation that's going to help families meet their breastfeeding goals. And those are available to people too. You can always just reach out to the website and find a bag. They get distributed all over the valley. So if you're interested in getting that, contact that website.
What are some of the items that are most needed or wanted to be able to put in the bag?
Yeah, well, that's the tricky thing is because, breastfeeding is really, there's not a lot of extra stuff, that you need. So a lot of it's just like resource information about maybe postpartum depression or postpartum doulas, people that are going to support your breastfeeding journey. Maybe just it's hard to say. Maybe like the fitness. People sometimes they want to get back into shape after they've had a baby, or just want to feel good. You just want to feel good. You want to bond with your baby, spending time with your baby. That's going to help.
Even just a resource gift of flyer or something of all of those places around the valley. And this is happening in Arizona, but my listeners can take this and run with it in their own communities. Is what I'm gathering is that the hospitals have no problems handing out bags filled with free formula and coupons and such. And this is your way of supporting the breastfeeding mother and giving her resources of where she could go if she's having some problems with breastfeeding. Or you also mentioned postpartum or looking to get back into exercising. And we don't necessarily have the time, new mothers, to be able to research this. And we have a lot of new people coming and going from the valley too. So I think anything that you can add, but even if we were to just be able to give out a resource list to places in the community is huge. And like I said, other communities can pick up on this. In the valley, about how many hospitals are you delivering these bags to?
Well, we really don't, that I'm aware of, usually do it to the hospital. A lot of midwives will get them, or women will just hear about them and they'll want them. We'll go and hand them out at events and things like that. But as far as I know, it hasn't reached that level where it's going to the hospital. We do about 200 bags about quarterly to hand out right now, because it is, it's all volunteer. It's a wonderful project. Very, very happy to volunteer and support that project.
Tell us a little bit about Dancing for Birth. I really want to hear more about that.
Thank you. Yes. So it was Dancing for Birth. It was created by a midwife. And it's all about this idea that if we move when we're in labor, that we are creating a bigger outlet for our baby to come through. Also, staying vertical when you birth, whether you're standing or on your knees, and allowing gravity to help you. Tapping into like the old ways of how things were done, reminding us of what we already know, really. And then postpartum too, baby wearing and dancing for bonding. And then of course, moms that want to just feel stronger, or maybe, new moms who think, I'm going to get back to that post-baby, I want that post-baby body, But hopefully through Dancing for Birth, we're learning that we've transformed into a whole new person, But through moving and dancing and bonding through your baby, you love that new person, and she's strong and she's capable and she has innate wisdom in how to do her job as a mother. So just supporting that in the community.
Can you be a little bit more specific when you say Dancing for Birth? I'm thinking like belly dancing, kind of like dancing.
Right. It is based off of belly dancing, which the philosophy kind of shares that belly dancing was originally created for, women. They got together and they were hanging out and they were singing and dancing in these ways and sharing the wisdom of how to have babies. And it was about moving your body in that region of your body in these circles. Belly dancing is part of it, but it expands into, other world dance moves. But dance moves that support good positioning for a baby and birthing is what we really try to focus on. Or postpartum things, movements that are going to strengthen your core and, help with pelvic floor things. Yeah. So, this is my new baby and I'm birthing it and I'm learning about what it is, what its capabilities are, what's the potential for this, sharing this with women. So I feel like it could still become so much more than just, it's more than just a belly dancing class for pregnant women.
Yeah. And I also picture it as being really excellent for women to get them out of the house together with other women to really help with any kind of postpartum baby blues that they might be feeling, that this would be great for all of those things also. I will put some info for my listeners, again, in the show notes about Dancing for Birth and how they might contact you and get more information about that also. Tell us about, are you going to births now?
I am. Yes, I am. I am attending births.
Cool. So you want to be a midwife?
I don't know. Right now, I'm in a place of what is called like birth companioning, really, where I want to be free to companion women who want to birth however they want to, outside of what maybe a government agency says is okay. Yeah, exploring what that would look like as far as continue on as birth work, and financially contributing to my family. There's Indie Birth is an organization that is actually like headquartered in Sedona that I've been, checking them out, listening to some of their podcasts. So yeah, so I'm still evolving in what I'm going to be doing as, a human, a woman, a mother, a birth attendant.
I love that you use the word evolve, because even when you think you do find that thing, you are still evolving and learning about more. We don't necessarily stay put. The grass doesn't stop growing underneath our feet, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was, I had gotten accepted to nursing school and I was going to be a nurse midwife. And then life happened and credit started to expire. And I was like, gosh, do I really want to take that class again? And I thought about being IBCLC also because the credits didn't expire like they did for nursing school. So that was a couple of years ago before I had my son, Andrew. And so now I'm in this place of kind of, free birth and that kind of thing. So who knows? We'll kind of just see what happens.
I was accepted to nursing school too, and then I worked so long to get everything I needed to get there. And then once I got there, I wasn't quite sure that's what I wanted to do. So they let you put it off for a year, and I had started my own private practice as a lactation consultant. So I put it off for a year, and then the paperwork came again, and I'm like, oh man, it felt like it was just a month ago that I put that off, and now it's a whole year. And at that point, you have to make a decision, and they only let you once go around to figure out if this is what you want to do. Understandably, they want to make space for someone else. And so I said no, because that's not what I really wanted to be doing.
Right. Yeah. It's funny how you get into something and you realize, there's parts of this that I would rather not have be part of it. So how can I move forward and leave that part behind me?
Right. Absolutely. Whether it's nursing school or like the same thing with midwifery, we're just always learning and evolving. And I think if we're connected enough to the little voice inside, because we do start something and some of us continue on with it, even though there's a little voice inside saying, I'm not really sure that's what I want to do. We just push that aside and we carry on and keep going for that. And then ultimately realize with a much stronger voice saying, no, that's not what we want to be doing. But now you're in the thick of it. And so some people just follow through and they come through the other side and realize that's not what they were meant to be doing. So I'm a huge supporter of people listening to that little voice inside when you're getting those little stirrings going on.
The instinct, and mothering has really helped me strengthen that. And breastfeeding is part of that. It's really awesome.
Tell us one thing that you would really love for a new mother to know. Well, tell us two things. One, I'd love to know what you really loved and enjoyed about breastfeeding. And then tell us one thing that you'd love for other mothers to know about breastfeeding.
Outside of, we talked so much, we got out of talking about some of the great stuff we were going to talk about as far as wholeness and wellness and all that. But it really takes care of so much. It is the biggest gift that is given to us as mothers. The design, I still breastfeed sometimes my daughter who's now 4 and we're working through, weaning and that kind of thing. But the way that I can comfort her just right away, any baby, but we're in a special place where she's right in the middle of 2 other children. So she's kind of special in that way. Yeah, I can solve a fight with my breast. I can comfort a tantrum. There's so much power at the bosom, So don't let the outside world convince you that it's not as powerful as it is. Yeah, that's really probably like my biggest takeaway.
What I'm hearing you say is something I say frequently, is that, especially with our newborns and infants, we're giving them tons of great nutrition and everything that they need to grow, be healthy. What you're saying also, especially when you get into toddlerhood, there's power at the bosom, and there's breastfeeding is a whole lot more than the nourishment that they get. It's a great mothering tool.
Yeah, how that keeps the whole family at peace, and you can resolve a screaming tantrum when you can just diffuse that, and then the rest of the family doesn't have to sit and dwell in that, environment. The rest of the family appreciates that.
Nothing works quicker than and resolving a tantrum than hopping on board, I say.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And then even for me, when I feel like I'm doing all this stuff running around, taking care of this and that and this and that, and just, get that baby and go and rest and just be with that baby and get that oxytocin going. And then you just kind of diffuses you too.
Exactly. Thank you for that. So, how can and listeners get in touch with you if they choose to connect with you about any of the projects, volunteer activities that you have talked about?
Yeah, the easiest way to reach me would be to text me at my phone, 602-402-0855. To reach me, I have a website and Facebook also. You can message me through Facebook. That'd be the next most reliable way.
Okay, I will put all of that in show notes. So for anybody who's new to listening to the show, when I mention show notes, there'll be a link that I will give you that you could sign on to. And then when you open up that page, it will have all the information from the show and any links about anything that we talked about. Darcy, thank you so much for spending time with me chatting about breastfeeding and your life with your children and breastfeeding and all the activities that you're involved in. And I know that you shared some really excellent tips from your own life experience and your own work with other mothers and babies. And I love everybody's different take on it. And sometimes there's some really great new stuff, and sometimes there's just a different way of saying the same old, but it's all really good. We have listeners coming on board at all different times, and it's so wonderful because we do a show like this, and you may never know exactly how many people you reached and touched, but I will tell you that it's thousands at this point. So thank you so much.
Wow, thank you. Good luck, everybody.
I had such a fine time hanging out with Darcy. She gave some really great tips for any new parents to utilize when they have to navigate the early days at home with a new baby. How can you tell your friends and family who are so anxious to see the baby that you need time alone as a family? We tend to be nice and kind and do whatever we can to make them feel welcome. We tidy up the house, we have refreshments available, and we get dressed and ready for them. Darcy recommends that you don't get dressed for company. You don't brush your teeth. You let them see that you're really not into having people over now. I like that tip. One tip that I like to share with new parents is to consider having an open house. Advertise and choose 1 day and 1 to 2 hours. You're going to let them know they're going to come over, see the baby, see you. You're going to have refreshments and let them visit and hang out with you. Let them see the baby, but pick one person who is going to make sure they give a strong message to your company that it's time to get to leave. Once you've had your open house, you can enjoy the early days with your newborn without having to always be looking and being available for visitors. So the thinking is if they have an open house, they get to see you, they might bother you because they still want to come over again and again, but at least you know you've given them one really good opportunity to visit with the baby, and then you can concentrate on yourself. And this is really important because early newborn parenting, it really can be quite overwhelming and very tiring, and you need to take care of yourself first. Darcy also talked about how co-sleeping was really important to her in that it allowed her to get some much needed rest while being close and available to her baby for feedings. I have added this information as well as a podcast where I interviewed Helen Ball. She's a researcher at the Mother Baby Sleep Lab in the UK, where she has been curating evidence-based research in the area of bed sharing. That is show episode number 133, so check that out. And you can also go to today's notes, which are allaboutbreastfeeding.biz/Darcy_Newlin. allaboutbreastfeeding.biz/DARCY_Newlin, NEWLIN, and that is where you're going to find a list of any books that we talked about, any links to websites that we talked about, and contact information for Darcy. Thanks everyone for listening in today. Until the next time, bye-bye.